James. It is my privilege to yield now to a key leader in our fight for common sense and comprehensive immigration policy. My friend, my partner, and our Democratic Caucus Chair, Pete Aguilar.
Thank you so much, Whip Clark. And I want to thank Chair Bedigan, as well as our Tri-Caucus chairs for leading the House efforts against this Republican, cruel, extreme, and reckless so-called immigration bill. I'm a proud member of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus because we are committed to standing up for American values at every turn and fighting back against extremism. And right now that means standing against this Child Deportation Act, which does nothing to fix the issue at our southern border and guts our asylum system along the way. In fact, it'll only make things worse while failing to address both the root causes of migration as well as the fentanyl crisis. I'll say it again. Democrats stand ready and willing to deliver real immigration reform. We want to focus on permanent solutions that include pathways to citizenship to ensure that we have a safe and orderly border. But we want an asylum system that is efficient and treats migrant families with dignity and respect. The bill being brought to the floor today does nothing to meet that standard. And the same working families that sent us to Congress will see right through these extreme MAGA Republican political stunts that mischaracterize the situation and use immigrants as scapegoats. We will never agree to cruel and extreme policies that jail children and will always work to uphold our American values. Someone who continues to be a partner in that progress that we seek to make is the chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, our friend Pramila Jayapal.
Thank you so much, Caucus Chair Whip Aguilar, and thank you so much to Nanette Barragan for your tremendous leadership, for your friendship, for your partnership, and to the entire Hispanic Caucus, as well as all of our other caucuses that are standing here together, united, against this horrific bill, H.R. 2, the Republicans' Child Deportation Act. I stand here also as the ranking member on the Immigration Subcommittee, and I can tell you we had a 16-hour markup of this horrific bill, and it was very difficult as an immigrant myself and as somebody who has worked on this issue for 20 years to hear what is in this bill. Nanette said cruel, extreme, unworkable. That is exactly what this bill is. It completely guts asylum, which is, by the way, a right that's enshrined in U.S. law. It completely bars children from ever being able to seek asylum if they come to this country between ports of entry. It mandates family detention. It mandates the detention of children. That is not who we are. It is not who we have to be as a country. Our immigration system is broken because it has not been modernized in over 30 years. It is not set up to meet the needs of our economy, our families, and our communities. There are real bipartisan options to humanely fix it, but this bill is not one of them. It is a patchwork of failed enforcement-only strategies. And it is clear to me that our Republican colleagues don't have real solutions and not even real interest in solving the complex issues surrounding our immigration system. The only interest is in villainizing and otherizing immigrants, using families who are fleeing violence as a means to their political ends, drumming up xenophobia and hatred by holding sham hearings, which is what our 16-hour hearing was. The debate on immigration in this country is really not about immigration policy. We have known how to fix the immigration system. Representative Sanchez has introduced a comprehensive immigration reform bill that is a perfect conglomeration of all the things that we need to do to fix our immigration system. We know what to do, but this has become about politics. Don't forget that 10 years ago, the Senate, the U.S. Senate passed a bipartisan comprehensive immigration reform bill with 68 bipartisan votes. Hard to imagine that. And it actually reformed the system. It had enforcement in there, but it reformed the system. But the Republicans who controlled the House at the time, many of my colleagues were here, refused to bring it to the floor for a vote. Why? Because they knew that if they brought it to the floor, it would pass. And if it passed, there would no longer be a group of immigrants to treat as political footballs instead of fixing the system. I'm lucky enough to say that I've lived the American dream. I believe it's a dream that should be available for everybody, for families fleeing violence, fleeing the effects of climate change, fleeing war, persecution, totalitarianism, seeking a better future. That is who America has always been, and I know we can get there. That's what Democrats are committed to. That's what our entire Unified Caucus is committed to. So with that, it's my great honor to introduce the fantastic chair of the Black Caucus, the Congressional Black Caucus, Stephen Horstrom.
Thank you, Representative Jayapal, and I'm honored to be here to thank Chairwoman Bedigan for her tremendous work in the entire Congressional Hispanic Caucus, as well as the other members from the Tri-Caucus, including CAPAC Chair Judy Chu, and for the work on this very important issue. First, I'm a son of an immigrant. My mother came to the United States as a child from Trinidad, and I have seen directly the effects of a broken immigration system within a family, within the 4th Congressional District of Nevada that I represent, and the constituents who are facing these issues every single day, and yes, here as a member of Congress. So I'm proud to stand in solidarity with my Tri-Caucus colleagues and others throughout the House Democratic Caucus, because we are here to say that H.R. 2 does nothing to fix our immigration system. In fact, it does the opposite. Our system remains broken, and yes, it does need to be fixed. But today's MAGA Republican plan is cruel and inhumane. It does nothing to address the root causes of the crisis. The Child Deportation Act would enact some of the Trump administration's most cruel and failed border policies and cost the American people $6.1 billion. The Child Deportation Act would restart the construction of Trump's excessive, expensive, and hateful, and yes, useless border wall. It would expedite child deportation, detain unaccompanied minors, and eliminate legal pathways for people looking to America for safety and a better life. It's completely anti-ethical to the values that we hold as Americans, because America is a nation of immigrants. Right now, MAGA Republicans are showing us yet again who they are and the cruel lengths that they will go to scapegoat and vilify immigrant communities to appease their extreme political base. Instead of working with Democrats to solve problems and to create a more just and humane immigration system, they're offering up a deportation bill to end asylum, close down our border, and inflict pain on the most vulnerable. These cruel policies fall far beneath our responsibility of care that public officials should have for our most vulnerable communities, especially vulnerable children. The MAGA Republicans will tell you that they are offering up H.R. 2 to keep people safe from fentanyl or illegal drugs, but as our whip noted, 90% of fentanyl comes into our country through ports of entry, carried by citizens, and it's being identified because of the work of President Biden and our agencies. United States citizens comprise 86% of fentanyl trafficking convictions in 2021. So if you want to solve a problem, stop scapegoating immigrants. Let's solve the issues for the fentanyl crisis and make sure that we keep all of our communities safe. The Tri-Caucus and House Democrats know that the people want what they deserve and what they need. 80% of Americans support providing a pathway to citizenship for undocumented immigrants who meet certain requirements. And 76% of Americans want Republicans and Democrats to work together on a comprehensive immigration reform bill. So we need real solutions, like creating a pathway to citizenship for our dreamers. We need to fund smart technology at our borders to detect drugs and fund increases to our Border Patrol agencies. These are all things that we passed with the Democratic majority in the House last Congress. Instead, last week, House Republicans passed the Default on America Act, which, among other things, cuts 2,400 border agents and officers and cuts funding to the very NGOs that assist unlawful immigrants, quote unquote. The cruelty is the point of their plan. The reality is that the Children's Deportation Act will worsen the humanitarian crisis at the border and do nothing to make our immigration system safer. So we call on Republicans to end this charade. I hope that their constituents that they represent will also understand there are real solutions, and Democrats are working to identify them. With that, I will turn it over to my colleague, the chair of KPAC, Representative Judy Chu.
As chair of the Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus, I am proud to stand with the Tri-Caucus and House Democrats in strong opposition to H.R. 2, the Child Deportation Act. The Child Deportation Act is not a serious attempt to fix our broken immigration system and address the humanitarian crisis at our southern border. Rather, it is an anti-immigrant MAGA wish list that will cause irreparable harm to children and families while creating chaos for our border patrol agents and ports of entry. This bill would decimate our asylum system by creating new and arbitrary restrictions for asylum seekers, all while gutting programs such as humanitarian parole that are proven to reduce the number of arrivals at our border. It would bring back the Trump-era policy of putting kids in cages by allowing children to be held in Border Patrol facilities for up to 30 days, 10 times longer than permitted under current law. It would eliminate core anti-trafficking protections for children, putting them at risk for human trafficking, sexual exploitation, and extreme violence. It would threaten unaccompanied children's safety and well-being while in federal custody by potentially ending background checks on the staff entrusted to protect those children. It would bar non-governmental organizations, even those with religious affiliations, from working with U.S. government to shelter or support immigrants, creating dangerous and inhumane conditions for our border communities that will have to fill the vacuum. Despite Republicans' rhetoric about the cause of the fentanyl crisis, this bill would reassign Border Patrol agents to transport asylum seekers rather than stop the transport of illegal contraband like fentanyl, 90% of which enters the country through legal ports of entry. And H.R. 2 would restore medieval proposals like the pointless border wall. This alarming list of xenophobic and uninformed policies will set us back decades, undermine our international leadership, and hurt our economy, all while doing nothing to alleviate the humanitarian crisis at the border. But yesterday, House Democrats presented a serious framework for how to fix and modernize our immigration system. The U.S. Citizenship Act, or USCA, recognizes that a robust, humane, and efficient immigration system makes America stronger, and it would mitigate the humanitarian crisis at the southern border by helping the president address the root causes of migration and provide resources to humanely and efficiently process children and families who seek asylum here. Further, it would reunite families, fix our visa backlog, protect immigrant workers from unscrupulous employers, and ensure no future president can ban entire groups of people based on their religion, race, or ethnicity. I am proud to stand with my House Democratic colleagues against this horrendous Child Deportation Act, and we welcome any serious negotiations with House Republicans to fix our immigration system and strengthen America for generations to come. And now I am proud to introduce our next speaker, who hails from California, Congressmember Salud Carvajal.
Thank you. I'm going to have you introduce me every time there, Judy. Let me start by saying that I myself am an immigrant. I immigrated to this country when I was 5 years old with my family, when the immigration system worked. The immigration system today is broken and it's not working. And what we're seeing today is a Groundhog Day experience where our Republican colleagues are again bringing cruel, inhumane, and xenophobic immigration reform policies that don't work. Today I represent the New Dem Coalition, representing our chair, Annie Custer. This legislation that is proposed is simply a messaging exercise by our Republican colleagues and is a far cry from actually addressing the very problems we are seeing at our southern border. While they are pushing a partisan proposal that has no chance of becoming law, New Dems are at the table, ready to work with anyone and everyone to truly secure the border, protect dreamers, solve our workforce challenges, and we are seeing from farms to pharmacies. We need a comprehensive bipartisan immigration approach to grow our economy, secure our border, and stem the flow of illegal drugs into our country. We all know how essential immigration is to our economy, but it is also a key component of our country's foundation as we work to rebuild our nation's infrastructure, invest in domestic manufacturing, create jobs, and combat inflation. This Congress, New Dems, launched our Immigration and Border Security Task Force, of which I am vice chair of. We are already holding meetings with various stakeholders, including some of our reasonable colleagues across the aisle. Republican leadership knows that H.R. 2 will not fix the problems at our borders or do anything to improve our immigration system, strengthen our economy, or stop the flow of illegal drugs. If anything, this backward legislation will only make matters worse. Across the globe, we are seeing more people forced to leave their home countries because of natural disasters, violence, wars, and more. And these challenges are only getting worse and growing. Inaction is not an option. That's why we are standing here today to call on Republicans to abandon this partisan approach and join Democrats in negotiating a bill that helps make our country and economy stronger. With that, let me reintroduce our chairwoman, Chairwoman Barragan, as she continues with our flow of speakers today.
So now we're going to begin with CHE leadership. Congressmember Darren Soto.
At 11:59 tonight, Title 42 ends. And we've seen President Biden step up to help address these challenges. He secured more protection border patrol in the omnibus. He put together a parole program to work with the countries that we're seeing a lot of immigration from, like Venezuela, Cuba, Haiti, and Nicaragua. And he sent 1,500 troops to the border. In this moment of need, do Republicans step up in a bipartisan fashion to present a serious set of solutions to help the president? Of course not. I've been to the border, and we already know what's working. Advanced sensors and technology at the border that could spot folks as they're crossing. Having additional custom and border protection to help with apprehension. Having humane civilians and DHS personnel process folks who are coming with asylum claims. And in Florida, you know, we don't have the southern border. Our border is our ports of entry. This does nothing for our state as we're grappling with issues of folks coming to the ports of entry. Meanwhile, Governor DeSantis in our state is about to sign a new law that attacks hospitals, attacks nonprofits, is going to hurt our agriculture as well as construction. We're already seeing early examples of crops that are not going to be picked in the fields and construction sites being abandoned. This bill won't do much for immigration, but it'll sure do a lot to increase inflation at a time when Democrats are working to lower it. En español, brevemente. Esta noche nosotros vamos a ver una terminación de título 42 y Presidente Biden está actando para proteger nuestra nación con más miembros del BPC para proteger nuestra frontera, un nuevo programa de paro y usando nuestra militaria también. Y en este momento, cuando nosotros necesitamos republicanos para trabajar con nosotros, ellos están haciendo nada que fuerzas que no son serios. Yo visité la frontera y nosotros necesitamos más tecnología, como es en el proyecto de ley de infraestructura. Necesita más miembros de frontera protección. Necesita personas quien puede procesar estos casos de asilo. Y por puertos, como nosotros tenemos en Florida, no hace nada. No hay nunca dinero para ayudar nuestros puertos en Florida. Y también nosotros vemos un proyecto de ley terrible de gobernador DeSantis que está atacando las iglesias, atacando a nuestras organizaciones de comunidades, atacando hospitales. Nosotros vemos está afectando agricultura y también nuestra industria de construcción ahora. En el fin, va a estar muy negativo por nuestra economía y para aumentar inflación a un momento que nosotros necesitamos trabajar juntos. With that, I'd like to introduce mi hermana, congresista Teresa Ledger Fernández.
Muchísimas gracias, señor, porque estamos aquí para hablar sobre los impactos a nuestros niños, a los inmigrantes, a nuestra economía. So I think we've heard a lot about the negatives that will come from the child deportation bill. We've heard a lot about how MacArthur's default bill, and that's MacArthur's default act. MacArthur is going to default on America. I want to talk a little bit about what we've all seen at the border. We've been there. We've looked into the eyes of those children. We've seen the sadness and, yes, the hope. And we've been surrounded by those children as they were asking us to make sure that you let them know we are here. I've been there. I have felt the tears. Imagine the desperation that a mother must have to put her child on a path, such a hazardous path, but she is putting that child on that path because she knows it is a path to safety. Imagine another mother, many, many, many years ago, who knew that if she did not send her child away, that child would be surely killed. So she got that baby and she put him in a raft and she sent him across the river. The Nile River. That baby was Moses. The bill we are taking up today would take away important asylum paths for children. And I am calling on my colleagues to remember the story of Moses, to remember the humanity that must be the guiding principle of the United States in our asylum laws, because these asylum laws are not just the asylum laws of the United States, they are international, and we must honor them here in the United States as everywhere. So yes, as we've all said, our immigration system is absolutely broken, and this is not going to fix it, because Republicans are creating more chaos at the border. Republicans and chaos, those two words are becoming synonymous. Republicans are creating chaos at the border the same way they have created chaos ever since the day they have won majority by that slim majority in this House. Chaos, not humanity, appears to be their guiding principle. You know, I serve on the Rules Committee, and the Congressional Hispanic Caucus submitted amendment after amendment to try to protect our borders better, right? Vasquez submitted an amendment to increase the funding so that we could interdict, so that we could capture the fentanyl at the border. Every single Republican voted against that amendment. We had amendments submitted by Salud Carvajal and Correa who were intended to help provide more resources to our Border Patrol officers. Republicans voted against every single one of those amendments. We submitted amendment after amendment to try to address the issues that we know are important. Republicans voted against every single one of those amendments, including the amendments that would have made it easier to be able to pick our crops so that in New Mexico, where you all know that delicious green chili we have, we are not able to pick and grow our green chili because of the lack of of immigrants available. These bills, what they are seeking to do, would make that even harder. And as has been noted, we have other bills that actually solve the problem. I am a proud co-sponsor of the Citizenship Act, but we also last year passed the Farm Worker Modernization Act, which was a bipartisan bill, which would have addressed certain things. Our Dream and Promise Act, that is still waiting for us to act. And as we've noted, the American public is behind these bills. 70% of the American public want to make sure that we allow our dreamers to stay here and realize their aspirations. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to another one of our leadership, my hermana, my vecina, from Congresswoman Andrea Salinas.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you again to Chair Barragan and everybody who is in solidarity in opposition to H.R. 2. So my dad immigrated from Mexico to the United States when he was just a child. He picked cotton and tomatoes in the fields of the Rio Grande Valley before going on to earn his citizenship. And in my hands here today, I hold Elena Salinas's, mi abuela's, naturalization papers and my grandpa's visa application. They sit in my office to remind me of where I came and the promise of America. As the proud daughter of immigrants, I know firsthand how legal immigration can enrich our country. And I know that our system is badly broken. The situation at our southern border is as unsafe as it is unsustainable. And like all my colleagues here today, I would welcome the opportunity to work in a productive, bipartisan, and serious manner on these issues. But H.R. 2 is not a serious effort. It's a cynical stunt by the increasingly radical Republican majority. And as my colleagues have already outlined, if it were to become law, this bill would harm our economy and ruin our agriculture industry, destroy the asylum system, and create further disorder at the southern border. If there's one thing that both sides agree on, it's that Congress cannot keep kicking the can down the road when it comes to comprehensive immigration reform and border security. We need to crack down on drugs and human trafficking. We need to protect both border communities and asylum seekers. And we need to address long-standing flaws in our system that hinder legal migration to the best nation on earth. But H.R. 2, sadly, does none of these things. Instead, we are once again reminded of a simple but sad fact. The American people deserve better than what this majority can offer on guns, on choice, on immigration, on our future. We deserve better. Thank you. And now I am honored to introduce my freshman colleague, Congresswoman Delia Ramirez.
Buenas tardes y a todos y a todas. Yo soy la congresista Delia Ramirez, and I represent Illinois 3rd Congressional District. As the daughter of an immigrant woman who literally almost drowned in El Rio Grande 40 years ago, just so that her daughter can survive, I could tell you that what we're seeing today is absolutely despicable. As the wife of a dreamer, Boris, who came here at a young age and has called this country home for years, as the representative of my constituents in the 3rd Congressional District, a district that is proud of the immigrants that call it home, whether they have lived here for years or they just recently arrived. I am furious about the Republicans' senseless and inhumane war against asylum seekers. The Republican border policy is policy violence that is fueling literally deadly violence. We know our nation is built on the hard work of immigrants. It's our foundation. It's our values. And we must do everything in our power to protect and expand the constitutional right to seek asylum, period. Instead, Republicans are doing everything in their power to advance the most anti-immigrant, hateful legislation our nation has seen in years. Instead, Republicans are emboldened deadly extreme hate. Instead, Republicans are militarizing our borders, sending the National Guard armed with guns and riot gear to the border. We have to end the war against asylum seekers, a war against children, pregnant people, and people of all ages who have left their homes to escape deep poverty, persecution, corruption, and violence. People who have left everything they knew behind just for a chance at a better life. We should be talking about resources that help people and strengthen the economy, not further militarize our border to traumatize asylum seekers. We can start right here at home with the Citizenship Act bill, and we can also do that through comprehensive immigration reform like the Dream and Promise Act. And we can push for executive actions now, like expedited work permits, so that immigrants can work and we can address a labor shortage. I am proud of my district in Chicago and of Illinois for standing up for asylum seekers. I urge my colleagues to vote hell no. A mi familia inmigrante que habla español, quiero que sepan que el caucus hispano del Congreso está con ustedes y que estamos luchando por ustedes todos los días con uñas y dientes para que sus vidas valen y también puedan tener el hogar que merecen en este país cuando están buscando asilo. Así que a trabajar se ha dicho, a asegurarnos que nuestras comunidades tengan los recursos que necesitan y aseguremos que votemos no en la legislación que literalmente quiere atacar a nuestras comunidades. Gracias. Y con eso regreso a nuestra chair. I return this to our chair, Nanette Barragan.
Thank you. If anybody has any questions, we have time for a couple of questions. Yes, can you identify your outlet as well?
Yes, thank you, Congresswoman. Jackson Richmond with the Epoch Times. What would be an acceptable immigration bill? Excuse me. What would be an acceptable immigration bill? What would you do to address the drug and human trafficking cartels?
Well, I think some of our members have talked about, and we introduced the Hispanic Caucus with Linda Sanchez introduced an immigration bill this week, the U.S. Citizenship Act. So that's a comprehensive bill. But the issue of the drugs that have been coming over, if you talk to anybody, including we have the ranking member here of the immigration sub, and myself, who used to be the chair of the border sub, the fentanyl and the drugs are coming in through ports of entry. And so in the omnibus last year, Democrats actually put dollars and more money into infrastructure at ports of entry, something Republicans did not support. But we have to continue to fund those efforts to making sure that we are getting to where the root of the problem is. And if that's not going to be in stopping the drugs from even making it to the border, it's going to be making sure they're preventing from coming over at the ports of entry. I don't know if you want to add anything.
Yeah, I would agree with everything the chair said and just add that first of all, we have to see the situation at the border as a symptom of a broader system that's broken. When you don't provide legal pathways for people to come in, and there are myriad legal pathways within the immigration system, most of which have been destroyed by the previous administration or are so backed up that they really don't serve the function of our current day economy, then you're going to see the challenges at the border. I always push back against the idea that immigration is tied in any way to drug trafficking or to human trafficking, because we know that there are comprehensive solutions for drug trafficking that Democrats have continued to fund. We know that 90% of fentanyl comes in, 86% comes in across ports of entry, and 90% is brought in by people who are U.S. citizens. So this is a false narrative that somehow immigration is tied to fentanyl. We need solutions to drug trafficking, to fentanyl. They're not tied to immigration per se. And so I think that's really, really important. And I think the last thing I would just say is there are a number of bills. The U.S. Citizenship Act is the most comprehensive. Last Congress, we passed the Farm Worker Modernization Act. We passed the Dream and Promise Act. All of those were stalled in the Senate, even though they passed in a bipartisan fashion here, because of the racist Jim Crow legacy filibuster that gives control of the Senate to 40 senators who represent 11% of the country. So we know we have a problem in the Senate as well, but we stand ready to continue to work on real bipartisan solutions, not enforcement-only solutions.
Yeah, it's on the back.
Lindsay.
In the Senate, some Democrats are looking at a more narrow approach now that Title 42 is being lifted to get resources down there. Durbin's introducing a bill today. I'm not sure of the details because he hasn't introduced it yet. obviously they have the Cinema-Tills bill, they want to kind of effectively extend Title 42 in a different form. Are you guys open to any narrow solution on resources or anything else that would kind of help stem the immediate flow that's expected after Title 42 that doesn't address legal pathways, or do the legal pathways have to be a part of any legislation?
Well, if you look at what we did last cycle, is we supported bills that were not the comprehensive citizen immigration bill. We know that that is what we need so we can get to the root causes of immigration. We passed out of the House, as was mentioned, the Dream and Promise Act. We passed out of the House the Workforce Modernization Act. So we recognize that we may have to address some of these issues not all at once. It would be better if we could do it comprehensively, but we are willing to do something that addresses all of those amazing young people, doctors, nurses, teachers who are helping us with our shortages in each of those areas because they're dreamers. Right, but we know that the Dreamer bill needs to expand beyond those who have been eligible for it in the past, right? Because right now, college kids, if you're a freshman in college, you're not benefiting from the deferred action for childhood arrivals. That the time has passed. We need to update that. So we have been willing to look at solutions that might not be the complete solution that we know is necessary.
Yeah, I think that's right. We support for processing and for modernizing the ports is really important because those have not been done in a very long time. I would also say that the support we put in the last appropriations bills for organizations along the border who are helping to do this work is also really, really important. It has been a part of the success story in places like Brownsville and El Paso that we have organizations that are able to house people, to feed people, to get them on buses to where they need to go. So I think that partnership of border forces plus city governments, local governments, plus the nonprofit and the federal government, of course, supporting all of that is part of the immediate answer. It won't necessarily fix the broader issue of the broken immigration system, but it's certainly worthwhile.
Okay, one more question. Gentleman here in front. Yes.
Michael Jones from Super Creator. Following up on the question with the Cinema and Tillis bill that they put forward, she said during a briefing, I'm less concerned about the elements of the House Republican bill and more concerned that they get a bill over to us because that's how we can work together. Are any of you confident that if this bill does pass and go through the Senate, that this will bring the two chambers together and somehow be a catalyst for talks about solving some of these issues that you discussed?
I don't think so.
No.
You know, my understanding from the Senate bill is she just wants to extend some version of Title 42 for 2 more years. The problem at the border with so many people that are waiting to come over is because we shut the border down and basically stopped honoring our asylum system, allowing people to come to ports of entry, to get processed, to be heard, and have said, no, you're going to go and wait. So to just say, no, you're going to sit there and wait for another 2 years is not going to help the situation. It's only going to create more people who are there desperate, waiting for their opportunity to apply for asylum, which is legal. So I don't think that is going to be a catalyst to have people come to the table. There are conversations I know happening with folks saying, what can we do? Is there anything? Is there a piece of Dreamers we can do? Is there a piece of this? Because we know that there is a need, and we know the American people want Congress to come together to provide legal pathways. But I don't think that passing this is going to be the impetus for something, and I don't know if my colleagues want to.
I completely agree. I completely agree. Yeah. I don't see how passing a cruel, unworkable bill opens up space for an actual bipartisan compromise. It should be a bill that is at least has some workable pieces. This doesn't have any workable pieces in it.
And I think that we have to remember that when we passed the suite of bills out of the House early in the 117th cycle, we actually thought we were going to get more Republican senators than we did. But then they decided to turn the border to weaponize the border, right? To turn it into the political hot potato that we are going to beat up Biden about this, when it was really caused by his predecessor. And so that's why I think that is the hump we need to get over. We need the American people to continue talking to their Republican senators and Congress representatives, because they support the plans that we have put forward. And that's where we need to start from, is something that actually fixes the problem, not something that is intended to be about fueling a sense of hatred and xenophobia. So that's where we need to start, is on something productive.
Thank you very much.